When children are taken from their parents and sent to detention centers in Texas, I get angry. When the EPA makes it easier for oil and gas companies to destroy the planet, I get angry. When senior citizens are dragged out of their house in their underwear into freezing cold temperatures, I get angry. When I hear the Trump regime has arrested journalists who are reporting on anti-ICE protests, I get angry. When innocent people are gunned down in the street by our government, I get angry. I bet when you watch the news, you get angry too. It's hard to be aware in today's society and not be angry all the time. Anger, rage, frustration, anger and outrage seem to come with awareness of what's going on to our planet and to our society. Today we'll be looking at anger, the most controversial emotion. Anger is like fire. It lights us up. It animates us. It gives us energy, but can also burn us out and burn those around us. We've all experienced or witnessed the negative effects of anger. Yelling, name-calling, physical violence. Anger can make us lose control and act in ways that we later regret. Buddha repeatedly warned against anger, saying, holding anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. These are wise words. How many of us read some comment on social media by some anonymous poster and we become angry? We become so angry, have a hard time letting it go. We think of our response, we pace around. I think we've all been there. Fuming, having a hard time letting it go, having trouble sleeping. I know I've been in this situation many times. Not for a while, thankfully, but I've been there. And I would ask myself as I was sitting alone in my apartment or my house, who am I hurting right now with my anger? And I realized it was just me. I was the only one that I was hurting with me being angry. I was causing myself suffering by being unable to let go of that anger. And we've all read about the negative health effects of anger. It has long been suspected that there's a link between anger and heart disease, for instance. And new research is establishing that link. In a recent study, researchers took 280 people, and they wanted to see the effect of different emotional states on people's blood vessels and what's called the endothelium. That's what controls whether or not blood vessels expand or contract, whether they dilate or constrict. So they wanted to investigate, well, what are the effects of emotions on the endothelium, our blood vessels' ability to constrict or expand, to dilate. And so they invoked anger, anxiety, sadness, or a neutral state in each of their subjects. And they tested them. They looked at their blood vessels at different intervals. And what they found was that those who were exposed to anger, those who became angry, their blood vessels were impaired for 40 minutes after they became upset. This was not the case for sadness, and this was not the case in neutral states, and this was not the case for anxiety. And so the researchers speculated that repeated episodes of anger could lead to permanent damage of the blood vessels and eventually cardiovascular disease. Anger takes a toll on our bodies. It is taxing to us physically. So for health reasons, we should let go of anger. We should calm ourselves. We should soothe ourselves. We should try to reach a state of equilibrium. But is staying calm and never getting angry an absolute good? Should we pursue equanimity above all things? Should we avoid the upsetting things, the things that make us angry? Should we just ignore global warming and petroleum company-fueled climate change? Should we turn away from social injustice? Or is there a place for righteous anger, for anger at social injustice, for anger over the destruction of the planet? And if there is a place for this righteous anger, what does that look like? And how do we distinguish righteous anger from destructive anger? Today in Resilience in Dark Times, we'll explore these questions. I'll talk about my own personal experience with anger and how that has shifted over the years. And we'll look at the work of Audre Lorde and Myisha Cherry on anger. Our story today deals with these themes, and our action item today will help you start to navigate this difficult terrain. Today on Resilience in Dark Times, resistance, rage, and resilience. You're listening to Resilience in Dark Times. I'm your companion and guide, Michael Glavin. Whatever brought you here, I'm glad you found us. This is a space for honest conversation, practical strategies, and the kind of hope that comes from facing reality together. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Before we begin, I just want to take a moment to appreciate you for being here with me. I think most people in these times, these difficult times, turn away from hard feelings. Feelings of fear, of sadness, of frustration, of helplessness, of hopelessness. They turn away. They don't want to know. They pretend it's not happening. They deny it. Or they just paste it over with blithe positivity. Oh, it's all going to be fine. It'll be fine. But that's not you. You are here. You're turning to face it. You're turning to face what is happening and all the difficult feelings that arise from that. The sadness, the disgust, the sorrow, the fear, and yes, the anger. That's what we'll be looking at today. And my sense is what allows you to sit with this is your love for fellow human beings, your love for the planet, your love for the creatures of this earth, your love for justice. I see this in you and I affirm it. This is so important. This is why you're suffering. This is why it's so hard right now. Because you have these connections, you have this love, and all that you love is under assault, and that is painful. But instead of turning away, instead of letting go of what you love, instead of denying what you love, you're trying to figure it out. You're trying to figure out how can I save and preserve and protect what I love. And that is admirable. That takes courage. That gives me hope that you are here wrestling with this, that we're wrestling with it together. And there are more of us. There are lots of us going through this. So I just want to recognize that in you and appreciate you for being here, talking through these difficult topics with me, thinking them through, feeling them through, figuring out how we're going to get through this and what's the way out and through to make this world not just to go back to something, because there were problems back then, but to make the world better than it was before. That's my hope. That's what I'm looking for. And I think you want that too. As we talk about anger and we discuss this, I want you to hold on to that connection, that love for the planet, for other people, for what's drawing you here, because I think that's what's going to help us get through this discussion in a really healthy, productive way. So let's begin. Let's talk about anger. We've all had many experiences with anger. Most of them, almost all of them, probably negative. Either experiencing anger, feeling anger ourselves, and doing things, saying things, yelling, name calling, whatever it was, doing things that we regret later, or being witness to that, or being victim of that hot anger and the yelling, name calling, physical violence that can result. I know my experience with anger growing up was not positive. My parents separated when I was 4 and then got divorced shortly after in what was called at that time a broken home. And no one calls that anymore, a broken home. But that was pretty accurate from the inside as a child. My world felt broken. And suddenly everyone around me was very angry. My dad had a temper. He was pretty good at controlling it, but he had sort of a seething anger, quiet anger, which was almost scarier. My mom was very angry. My brother was angry. They would fight a bunch. And so I disavowed my anger. I pushed it away. And so that wasn't my role in the family structure. Was more the mediator, the one to not have problems, the one to be more calm, which worked in the short term. It worked in that sort of family structure. But that definitely didn't set me up for dealing with anger later in life. Later, I was involved in a long-term relationship, and that relationship suddenly took a very negative, very dark turn where my partner started to become very angry and rage and become abusive verbally and physically. And so I met that anger with what I did as a child, which was with understanding and empathy. And that did not work. That was perceived as weakness. And so the abuse increased. And so then I tried again and again. That just got worse and worse. And so then I became angry. And then so I started saying things and doing things that was not me. I did not recognize myself. And of course, my then expression of anger didn't help the situation at all either. And so then I went to therapy. And in therapy, I learned to channel my anger, to get in touch with it, and to express it in a healthy, positive way, which had never been modeled for me, which I never knew before. And I learned, oh, okay, I can stand up for myself. I can set a boundary. I can say no. And I can do that in a way that's not controlling of the other person. So rather than saying, you will respect me and you will use language. No, it was more like, if you do not respect me, then I will leave. I will remove myself. So it's setting boundaries, controlling what I can control, which is me and not the other person. So I would communicate what I needed, how I want to be treated, and then I would set a boundary that I could enforce. And that was huge for me to see anger is not only destructive, but they can have this energy that can be protective, that can be creative, that can be constructive, that it didn't have to devolve into injury and destruction and pain and all sorts of terrible things. And that's why we have anger in the first place. It's our, I've talked about the fight-flight response. So this is the fight response, or the fight-flight. So when our safety is threatened physically, and we need to fight back to protect ourselves, we get angry. And that gives us the energy to physically protect ourselves. But when we're in situations where we're not in physical danger, we can be attacked verbally. And so we can become angry in that situation. And then sometimes it can spill over into destructive responses, but it doesn't have to. That energy can be channeled into productive, protective responses, to use words to set boundaries and to use our actions to remove ourselves from dangerous or difficult or abusive situations. So seeing anger as a potentially really good source is really important for me. And that's something that I help clients now in my private therapy practice. I help people who are being abused in relationships get in touch with their anger in order to protect themselves, to make themselves safe, to help them create a better situation for themselves. And sometimes that's possible within the context of the relationship, and sometimes it requires leaving that relationship. But in any event, it's not me telling them what to do. It's me helping them get in touch with themselves and what they're needing and what they're wanting, and in touch with that anger, which can be the energy to help them get what they want and what they need. So this is the healthy version of anger, as opposed to anger as vengeance, right? Or anger is just venting energy, right, on those around you. Or anger as punishment, like punishing somebody with your anger. Or anger as sadism, right? Enjoying inflicting suffering on someone else. Instead of that destructive anger, this is anger as protection and a healthy version of anger. I'll also point out one other type of anger. I call it the pickle jar anger. So, if say you want a pickle and you have a new jar of pickles and you get it out and you try to open it, you're like, ugh, and it's hard to open. It's a pickle jar, right? So you can't, it's vacuum sealed. You can't quite open it. And so often, like I know I have this response, I get frustrated, and I get angry, and I go, I double down on that pickle jar. And with that energy, it goes pop, and I can open that pickle jar and can have a pickle as a reward. So that is a type of anger when willpower is blocked, anger can result to give us the energy to push through, right? So I'm sure Sisyphus, right, who rolls the boulder up the hill and that rolls down the other side and has to do it again. I'm sure that makes him really angry. And so he uses that anger to to roll the boulder back up the hill, to have it roll down. That gets really frustrated and he does it again, right? It also is a healthy use of anger when it's directed at inanimate objects. One of the dangers is that people use that form of anger, that frustrated willpower anger, against other people. And when you do that, you're treating the other people like objects. And so that's very dangerous. That's very destructive. And that's the form of anger that people usually go to anger management classes and things like that, because that's not good. That's where you need to take deep breaths and do meditation and do whatever you can to calm yourself down. And then once you're calmed down, you can try to negotiate, what you're needing versus what they're needing. But the key is really recognizing that they have needs that are different from your own. They are also a subject. They also have desires and wants and stuff. And so you're not necessarily going to get everything you want or need. That you need to work with that other person. So anger in that situation has really no place. It's not effective or healthy. It's actually dehumanizing to the other person. For me, this comes up driving in traffic. And so imagine you're in the left lane and there's two cars ahead of you in the right lane. And there's a red light coming up to red light. And so you imagine that you're going to be the first person in the left lane, right? And say you're late for something. So it's important that you are first so you can not be behind a slow car. You can get there on time, all that stuff. And so then imagine that you're pulling up to the stoplight, but the second car in the right lane changes lanes in front of you. So now you're the second car in both lanes. I don't know about you, but my immediate response is like they somehow are usurping something from me. They're taking something from me. My desire was to be in that first spot in that left-hand lane, and they took that away from me. And I have to take a deep breath and remind myself, maybe they're in a hurry too. They have desires too. They didn't do anything wrong or anything to me at all. They are an equal with equal desires, and they have just as much right to that pole position as I do. Even though I wanted that, that's okay, right? So that's switching from seeing them as an object that's an impediment to my desire, my willpower, to another subject who has equal rights to me. And when we talk about authoritarianism and authoritarian governments and patriarchy, this is key. This is what we're talking about on a psychological level. Authoritarians and patriarchs treat other people like objects that are either there to satisfy their desires or an impediment to their desires. And then they get angry and punish those people for not complying. We see this happening from the president on down in our society right now. And so I think it's important to admit that, we all have some of this in us, right? We're all susceptible to this. We all can see other people as objects at times. And we have to remind ourselves, wait a minute. This is another person. They have thoughts and feelings and wants and needs. One practice I do for traffic is, especially when I'm late for something, I have to get somewhere. So I change the frame from I need to get to this place at this time to we all need to get to where we're going safely. And when I make that shift, suddenly I see other drivers as people with their own needs and desires. And so then I'm much more generous of letting other people get into my lane and to turn in front of me. And I'm looking out for other people. I'm waving at them, because we're all in this together. I want to get to where I'm going safely, and I want them to get to where they're going safely. So this is an empathetic, connected, I-thou relationship, which can keep anger in check. So that's anger at an individual level. And there's a lot of destructive expressions of anger, of vengeance and venting and harming other people. But there's also a very healthy version of anger. Anger can serve a really important, vital, healthy role in our lives if channeled properly, if within the context of mutual respect and recognition of the other person's needs and desires. That they're not an object, they also have needs and desires too. And so then together we can coordinate to both respect each other and both get what we're needing. A basic mutualism. But what about anger at a societal level? What about anger in response to ecological devastation caused by greedy corporations, enabled by governments? What about anger in response to social injustice? There's new ongoing research that suggests that anger in response to perceived injustice or unfairness may be hardwired into us. In one study involving monkeys, and I will put this in the show notes, they had these monkeys in these glass cages with holes in them. And these monkeys liked sliced cucumber, but they really liked grapes. So there's a scientist outside of the cage with a bowl of sliced cucumbers and a bowl of grapes. And they had these monkeys perform this simple task. The researcher would give the monkey a rock, the monkey would give the rock back, and then they would get a reward. So for the first monkey, give the monkey a rock, the monkey gave the rock back and got a cucumber slice. Went to the second monkey, and they can see each other. Same thing happened. Rock, cucumber slice for the reward. Back to the first monkey, rock, cucumber slice. Second monkey, rock. And then for the reward, they gave that monkey a grape instead. And so you can see the first monkey get a little agitated. Back to the first monkey, gave the monkey a rock. And the reward wasn't a grape, it was a cucumber slice. And the monkey got very irate and took the cucumber slice and threw it at the scientist. The scientist ignored it, went to the monkey number 2, rock, grape. Went back to monkey number 1, rock, cucumber slice. And the monkey shook the cage, threw the cucumber slice back in the bowl, was very upset. You definitely have to check out the videos. It's amazing. The rage, the anger at the injustice of, hey, like, we're doing the same task here and I'm only getting a cucumber slice, but that other monkey's getting a grape. That is not fair. And the response to that injustice is anger. I find this fascinating. And I find it so true and so relatable. And we see this through our society. We have a certain sense of fairness and justice. And when that's not being upheld, we get angry in response to that. And I think that's a healthy response to try to set things right, to try to make things fair. So on a personal level, the anger can be channeled towards setting boundaries, standing up for ourselves. And on a societal level, that anger can be channeled towards creating a just society, to undoing unfairness and injustice. The African-American philosopher Myisha Cherry uses the work of Audre Lorde, especially her 1981 keynote address at the National Women's Studies Association conference, called The Uses of Anger, Women Responding to Racism. It's an amazing speech. I'll put a link to it in the show notes as well. And in it, Audre Lorde talks about how turning away from or avoiding anger teaches us nothing. It gets us nowhere. Audre Lorde says that anger is loaded with information and energy. She says anger is an appropriate reaction to racist attitudes, as is fury when the actions arising from those attitudes do not change. Audre Lorde distinguishes between anger and hatred. So hatred is what the racists feel towards African Americans. And anger is what African Americans feel in response to being subjected to racism. So she says, hatred is the fury of those who do not share our goals, and its object is death and destruction. Whereas the object of anger is change. Anger used does not destroy, hatred does. And that's a important distinction. This anger she's talking about, that Myisha Cherry calls Lordean Rage, which I love. Lordean Rage is about change. It's about justice. It's about undoing racism and racial injustice. Myisha Cherry looks at that speech and she coins the term Lordean Rage. So Lordean Rage is a productive, justice-oriented rage that aims for social change rather than destruction. Cherry writes that Lordean Rage aims not for destruction or elimination of the other, but change in racist beliefs, expectations, policies, and behaviors that shape and support white supremacy. So this is an anger in the service of justice, in the service against racism for social justice. That's why it's empowering. That's why it's energizing. That's why it's creative. And it's not destructive. It's not about vengeance. It's not about hate. It's something very different. It's a positive force in the world. And therefore, we don't need to be afraid of it. And Cherry says we should actually cultivate it, that this is a good thing. This is a good thing to help us overcome a racist society. I think this is so important. I think the notion of Lordean Rage is so important to social movements. Rather than what's known as tone policing, this really welcomes anger and it sort of channels it towards something really positive and constructive. Oppressed people should be angry. It's okay to be angry. That anger, that passion, that's what we need to change society, to change these power structures of exploitation and domination. So when we see what's happening to the people of Chicago, to the people of Minneapolis, anger is a proper, appropriate response. And that anger needs to be channeled like Lordean Rage towards justice, towards change, to stopping these practices by the federal government. This type of anger is not only okay, it is necessary to give us the energy to stand up and fight, to stand up and defy authoritarianism. And I'm happy to say, as of the recording of this episode, the people of Minnesota did stand up to the authoritarian crackdown in that city, and they forced out the federal government. The federal government backed down because people were rightfully angry and took to the streets and didn't give up. And that's just one little victory in a long, long war. But it's important to recognize that courage and bravery and righteous anger helped win the day in Minneapolis for the time being. But what about in terms of the anger in regards to ecological destruction? Is there a term for that? Well, actually, there is. The Australian environmental philosopher Glenn Albrecht coined the term Terrafurie to connote the kind of anger that is specific to the losses incurred in the climate, nature, and biodiversity crises. Albrecht describes Terrafurie as the extreme anger unleashed within in those who can clearly see the self-destructive tendencies in the current forms of industrial technological society, but feel unable to change the direction of such terracide and ecocide. He says that such Terrafurie is a protective anger, not one that is aggressive. He calls it a political anger that transforms unresolved grief into anger about the causes of the Earth's destruction. And I love this term, Terrafurie. I think it's so much better than eco-anxiety. Eco-anxiety, I think, pathologizes the person who has the anxiety. As if, if you have social anxiety, it's like, okay, what do I need to do in terms of breathing techniques and what strategies to use to try to help me get over and manage my social anxiety? So in that situation, the anxiety is the thing that needs the treatment, right? So eco-anxiety is like, okay, what do I need to do to calm myself down as the planet burns and is completely destroyed? No, our feelings in response to the destruction of the planet are healthy and normal. We should allow ourselves to feel the fear of the future, to feel the anger in what's happening to the planet, what corporations are doing to the planet, what politicians are allowing to happen to the planet. Anger, fury is a proper response. Eco-anxiety, it's a powerless stance, and it leads to self-soothing. Whereas Terrafurie is a call to action. It's a call to do something. It's a rage at what's happening to the planet. And he's right, it's protective. We're wanting to protect the ecosystems, the creatures, the planet in general, and all the people on the planet, because we're part of the planet. We're part of the nature that's being destroyed. So I love these two terms, the Lordean Rage, in terms of the social injustice. And so trying to change structures of domination and replace them with egalitarian democratic structures, non-discriminatory structures, and Terrafurie, the anger at ecocide, and the call to protect the earth and the creatures of the earth, including humans. Rawr. I'm getting fired up. I don't know about you, but I'm energized right now. And studies have shown that anger actually is mobilizing. It mobilizes people to take action, to vote, but also to get in the streets, to organize, to form collectives, to do things together, to protect the earth, to fight social injustice, to create a better world for ourselves and for future generations. This is the energy we need. We don't need to be afraid of anger. It's okay to be angry. It's important to be angry. It makes sense to be angry. We just need to channel it into really productive, creative ways to build the society we want. At the beginning of the podcast, we talked about how Buddha talks about anger as a coal that we pick up, we want to throw at someone else, but we're the ones who get burned by it. Well, it reminded me of ancient peoples and the problem of maintaining fire, because it was really expensive, really difficult to start a fire, but it's a lot easier to keep a fire going once you had one going. But if you're traveling, if you're a nomadic culture, what do? Because you can't just bank the coals. So what did they do? They took the coals, some of the coals from the fire, and they put them in some sort of container so that they wouldn't get burned by them. Like it could be an antler, a horn that's hollowed out, and then they put kindling in there, and then they make sure that the oxygen is really low so it smolders for a long time. And if you do that, you can take that coal with you to your next location. And then once you get there, you can add some kindling, and then boom, you have a fire again. So what if Lordean Rage, what if Terrafurie was like this coal or this ember that we kept with us, that we cultivated, we made sure we didn't get burned by it, but we always had it. So when the conditions are right, we can add some kindling, and then we can get our fire going again. And I guess in this metaphor, that would be taking action when it's appropriate. Then the resistance quickly spreads, and then we can have transformation. Then we can have change at a large scale. So it's not about pushing away this anger. It's about keeping it with us, but making sure it doesn't consume us until the time is right. And then we can share it with others. Then we can use it effectively instead of being burned by it. We don't need to throw it at anybody. Lordean Rage and Terrafurie, two healthy expressions of anger. One, anger against injustice and trying to change those structures in a positive way. The other, anger over ecocide and trying to protect the earth and its creatures. Our story today deals with injustice, destruction, and rage. I'm really excited about it. The story for today's episode is Kali battles the demon Raktabija. It happened once that the world was threatened by the Asuras, demons. The demons rallied together to overcome the gods and gain control of the earth. The leader of this uprising was Raktabija, the demon general. Through the practice of austerities, Raktabija was granted a boon. This boon, granted by Brahma, allowed Raktabija's power to increase by 1,000 every time a drop of his blood was spilled. The demon soldiers led by Raktabija came forth, and the gods trembled with outrage. The demons ravaged the earth and its inhabitants. Who would rid the world of this monster? In desperation, the gods turned to their Shakti, female energy, counterparts. The great and beautiful goddess Durga stepped forward. She had protected them before and was obliged to do it again. Armed with the weapons of the gods, Durga rode into battle on a tiger, her champion mount. She switched goddess forms many times during the battle, slaying demon soldiers as quickly as they advanced, until all that remained was the demon general. The battle between Raktabija and the Devi ensued. Durga charged again and again. Raktabija's blood spilled everywhere. From each drop of blood, 1,000 more demons like him sprang up. Full armies arose from the puddles of Raktabija's blood. Demons advanced on the goddess by the thousands. They rode on elephants and horse-drawn chariots. They laughed and shouted at the goddess's dilemma. Upon seeing this, Durga became enraged. She knitted her brows in absolute fury. From this concentration came Kali, the terrible one. The whole universe shook with the thundering roar of this powerful, terrible goddess. Those demons who stood nearest the mighty diva were consumed within the roaring rage of energy. Kali emerged, naked except for a covering of tiger skin. Her skin was of the deepest black and hung loosely on her bones. This mad skeleton of a hag was armed with a skull-topped staff, a noose, and a sword of vengeance. She appeared most frightening, with her blood-red eyes sunken deep in her skull, wild and raw power anxious to be unleashed, and a third eye flaming brilliantly from her forehead. Her entangled black hair blew wildly about her shoulders. She turned her furious gaze upon the demon armies, half fell lifeless from the deadly grip of her stare. She let out a loud and petrifying shriek, and more fell dead to the ground at Kali's feet. With wild cackling, she advanced on her enemies. She reached out with her claw-like hands and shoved some of the remaining demons into her gaping mouth. The rest turned away in fear of this ferocious Devi. The skies were filled with the sound of her shrieking laughter, but Kali didn't stop at that. She stretched out her bright red tongue and swallowed all of the elephants and their riders as they tried to run. The horse-drawn chariots disappeared with another mouthful into the abyss of the dark goddess. With his armies fully destroyed, again the great Devi faced off with Raktabija. Kali pierced the demon in the side and quickly caught the flowing blood with her tongue and drank it greedily. The life energy of Raktabija flowed out with his dripping blood like wine from a bottle. This time he was not given the chance to raise more demons from his blood. He was helpless in the face of this terrifying hag. Kali lifted him high in the air so she could more easily drain the blood from his body. Finally, drunken with the blood of victory, Kali threw away the demon general's corpse. The world was saved. Almost. Part 2. The Dance of Victory. It was time for Kali to begin her victory dance among the demon corpses. By now, she was drunk from Raktabija's blood, and the effect it had on her caused her to dance wildly. As she danced, she threw her head back and again filled the skies with her shrill cackling. Her terrible laughter drew the attention of the gods, who came back to see the outcome of the battle. They watched as she waved in and out between the bodies of the demons. As she went, she snatched up tokens of victory. From the demons' hands, she created a belt, and from their head she fashioned a garland, which she wore around her neck. Her dancing grew more and more frenzied as she slipped into a trance. Her feet pounded out destruction with each step upon the earth. Soon the demon corpses were reduced to mush, yet Kali continued dancing. It seemed as though nothing would stop her, and again the world was on the verge of collapse. Something had to be done, and soon. The gods begged Shiva to intervene and calm Kali before it was too late. Shiva did not yet believe that the world would be destroyed. As Lord of the Dance, he himself was enjoying the fine display of dancing. He laughed and waved the other gods away. "Let Kali enjoy herself," he said. "Her job was well done." That was right before he was unseated by the thunderous pounding of Kali's dance. When he attempted to right himself, another footstep from the Devi sent him flying in the air. He then understood the force of what was taking place. He hurried down to the other gods. They again beseeched him to do something. Shiva called out to Kali, but she could not hear him. Such was the fever that raced through her. She continued pounding what was left of the demon flesh into oblivion. She rattled her staff and shook her great head. Her hair whipped wildly around, causing great winds to carry off a few of the gods that were nearby. She turned about and lifted her arms to the sky, laughing crazily all the while. Nothing could stop this display of raw energy. Shiva called out again, but again his words went unheard. Finally, in an act of complete desperation, Shiva threw himself down beneath her feet. Kali continued her frenzied dancing, pounding the life out of her husband. It was a few moments more before Shiva realized that it was indeed her husband, Shiva, who lay flattened at her feet. This quickly brought her out of her trance, and she was once more the calm Devi. Once more, the world was saved from total destruction. Shiva's quick and selfless thinking had balanced the Devi's dance of destruction. With the world now safe, the gods returned to their regular routines. Such is the nature of Kali. The end. I won't talk too much about this story. I'm not a Hindu scholar by any means, but I do love this story. It speaks to me. I think it speaks to our time, this time of destruction of the earth and its people and its creatures, and this fury that arises in response, this protective rage, this feminine power to stop the destruction, to defend the earth and its peoples, this protective force. And it also points to the potentially destructive effects of this rage and this fury, and the need to moderate it with love and compassion and empathy. Anger within the context of love. Anger as defense, anger as protection, anger in the service of the greater good and bounded by empathy and love and connection. So I think this story has it all, and it speaks on many different levels. I'll leave it there for you to think about this story and how it resonates with you. Your action item for today is a thought experiment. I want you to take some time and think about what right now in the world is really making you angry. It could be something specific related to social injustice or about environmental destruction or devastation. Let yourself feel that anger for a bit and cultivate it a little bit. But then I also want you to tap into what you're loving about what is being attacked or being destroyed. So be in touch with both of those things at the same time, the anger and the love. I want you to use that anger to envision what is it going to take to undo that social injustice or to protect that thing that's being threatened or to undo that destruction or devastation. And just do a thought experiment of imagining all the people coming together to heal that thing, to restore something, to undo something. For example, if you're really upset about food deserts and food scarcity in our inner cities, people are going hungry right now because they can't afford enough to eat. SNAP benefits are being cut and there's inefficiencies in the system. And so let yourself feel the anger at our capitalist society and our economic structures that create these conditions where people are hungry, and the politicians' inability to really deal with these situations and to address these needs. And let yourself feel that anger, but then also feel the care and the love for the people who are hungry right now and not getting what they need, the children and the parents, and working hard and not making ends meet. And then think about what would it take to help that situation, to correct that situation. And so I imagine people coming together and maybe doing a mutual aid group where people are talking to restaurants and trying to get the Restaurants throw away lots of food every day. And so coordinating with those restaurants, getting that food, going to grocery stores, getting stuff before they throw it out, and creating this distribution system and getting it to the people who need it, and feeding those people, giving their kids food, and setting up this really great mutual aid network that feeds people. I want you to take some time to do that. If you ask, well, okay, why am I doing this? Is it just to make me feel better? No, I think it will a little bit make you feel better a little bit. But what it does is it primes your brain. I believe in the psychological power of envisioning the future that you want, because it primes your brain to start looking for that. So suddenly, if you use the example that I did, maybe you see a flyer that says mutual aid group meeting next week, Tuesday, all right? And that pops out at you because you've already done this exercise. And then that might lead you to join the group and get active and connect with other people, or et cetera, et cetera. If we're all starting to envision the world that we want to see, then that's one step closer to doing that, to following through on that. And the reason why I brought up that example is because that's what's happening here in Chicago. People are starting up a mutual aid group to deal with employment, legal support, food, mental health, and other needs of the community. And I'm getting involved in that. I'm really excited about it. It's something that's really, really positive, and trying to create the future that I want to live in and I want my kids to live in. So that's your action item for today. I'm lining up an interview from March with Dennis Kiley. He's been involved with eco-psychology for a long time. I think he has a lot to say that's really going to help us on resilience and the state of the environment and the globe and what's happening ecologically and how to deal with it, how he navigates through that, what he recommends. I'm really excited about that. And next week, we're going to talk about resilience as practice. So resilience is not just in your head, resilience is what you do. So we're going to talk about resilience as practice. Until then. Thanks for joining us on Resilience in Dark Times. Remember, building resilience isn't a solo project. It's something we do together. If this episode helped you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and visit resiliencindarktimes.com to join our community of people who refuse to give up. Until next time, stay strong, stay connected, and keep resisting.